Boulevard Minda, Mopododem, Mishawaka and Donsbia, Gula, Kiendi. I introduced myself as Bear Paw. I'm of the Bear Clan from the Potawatomi Nation. I'm the head man of my family, Ogimausawa. I was born in Mishawaka and I come from the earth as being Earth Clan. I'm also known as Jefferson Redmond Ballou IV. I was raised in Los Angeles, California. I was born in Mishawaka in 1973. Left in the blizzard of '78, went out to Los Angeles and was raised out there. I moved back here when I was 19 years old. My family had just started to go through the process of learning about their culture, their spirituality, their identity. I am a Kuigno Batiste from the Pokagon band, and I come from Sawak, who is Toknabi's younger brother, who helped raise Pokagon, who we now know as the Pokagon. And so we have stories about who those were and what that is all about. I had a very rare opportunity to be engulfed with the spirituality, more so than being involved in the language, specifically to the St. Joseph River Valley. The language that was introduced to me is more what is known as Anishinaabe-Moan, that of the Great Lakes Basin, Ohio River Valley. And the conversational language that I don't have, I'm sure my teacher would also talk about that. It encompasses more of that broader scale of the Great Lakes Basin and Ohio River Valley. One of the few things that I really cherish about this opportunity is being inside that Patamoigon, the People's Lodge, the Longhouse, and learning about that Medeoan way of life, and how that language was utilized to help us understand those things that are around us in creation. The way that we travel around this earth, gathering these teachings, the way that we walk this good red road, and understanding Majumadezuan, that great sacred hoop of existence. So when we start to talk about spiritual existence and spiritual understanding, those are the kinds of concepts of the language that I have been gifted and tried to share with other people. In doing that, I think that there's that opportunity to have that mnemonic tool to help you, where we're not talking about an Mkwang or a Dokman, but we start talking about those Migons and that Migizi Manitou. And one of those ways that was introduced to me was how songs were created and how we utilize those songs to help us in our daily lives. A lot of us are walking in two worlds. We walk in both the American world and we also walk in our indigenous world. I would like to share a song that was created by Benishi Kwe of the Wamimi family that gives us that strength about how to walk in these two worlds. And so at this time I'd like to share that with you. We feel you in the air, we see you everywhere. We need you, get your Where are you, Gitchinanadu? I feel you in the air, I see you everywhere. I need you, Gitchinanadu. We talk about how we address creation in life. One of those those things that we were taught is that our voice is one of the most sacred gifts that we've been given. We're able to talk to our Creator, talk to our creation, and sing. But it's also one of those things that can be misused. We can use our voice for lies and rumors and envy and greed. And we can destroy places and people and nations by using that in a harmful manner. Those mnemonic tools were taught that Jishiguan, one of our very first musical instruments, and it comes from that Benishi, who in our creation story was one of the first entities that was created to go around and spread the seeds of life. That first sound is those seeds falling from their wings to our mother, the earth. And so that relationship between Benishi, that bird, and that Jishiguan, our rattle, you can hear it in that language. More specifically, we're taught about that rattle being that implementation of how creation started itself. The head of that rattle is in the shape of our women's ovaries. The seeds of life are inside of that. And it's connected with a natural material, whether it be antler or wood, to represent that male icon. So bringing together both male and female to create life, to support that structure, is what our Jishiguans are about. And it's also about that mnemonic tool, that way that we remember that we remember that we're all a part of this process, and that our voice, those very first sounds, are there for us to remember. And so, again, I appreciate that opportunity to share that song with you. We get into, when I first moved here, I came here, started studying these ways, so to say, when I was 19. But I would come back to Los Angeles and South Bend and Mishawaka since I was 6 years old and fly on a plane. And one year I was 16 years old, and I came back here, and on my way home during the winter time, we got stuck at Chicago O'Hare because Notre Dame basketball team went into triple overtime. And so we had to wait literally on the tarmac to go home. And in doing so, the plane caught fire when we started to taxi on. After all the Notre Dame players came and we started going down the runway finally. And that airplane literally filled up with smoke and started to catch on fire. It came to immediate halt. The doors were kicked off, and the raft, we had to slide down the rafts in the middle of the snow, and they came out in buses. And I ended up spending my next 2 nights in Chicago O'Hare in the airport at 16 years old. That next summer, I came back out, and I spent some time with a cousin of mine, David Martin, and an individual, Tom Topash. And I was really scared to go back on that plane and go home. And they taught me a song that really helped me out and has helped me again. And when we talk about certain words in our language, this song was taught to me about how when we use this song, it's not to describe its physical form, it's that spirit of, the essence of. And again, when we go into our language and our culture and using those mnemonic tools, that the Wagon, that first heartbeat that we hear, that first sound that we hear inside our mother's womb, again, you need that 2 parts of those, that male and that female side being that drum, and that male side being that drumstick. But when we talk about that, this song was referred to as the Eagle Spirit song, Magizi Manadu. And it helped me out. I literally was sitting in the plane singing this song because I was so scared to take off. And we make a joke, some of us would make jokes about that Chmokman Magizi, that's up there, that big airplane that flies around. And we see that up there, we can see its trail even. But in relationship to that, we're reminded of that Wamigo, right? That Thunderbird spirit that flies above all of those things and helps us in doing so. So again, I'll just sing a couple verses of this song and then go into our next process. lot of times in our conversationals, we use that word Gano just to describe our ego. But a long time ago, in learning about the ego, especially how it intervened in saving humanity, especially for the Great Lakes Basin, Ohio River Valley, us Anishinaabe, now we hear that word Gano. I like to remember those old ways and those teachings that were taught about that Medesin and how it came and helped us survive. And remember our teachers, which is the most important when we start talking about our culture and our spirituality. A lot of these people have passed on. Shukshwana, a lot of those individuals who left these teachings behind are now gone. And we try to remember those people, Imazakwa, and we remember that teaching, that storyline. As I introduced myself, I said that my spirit name is Bear Paw. Again, when that name was given to me, it was actually talked about the hand of the bear, Makwanich, Ninch being the hand, Makwa being the bear. But specifically that paw part, right? That it wasn't the claws. It was how that bear interacted with creation, how that first contact with Mother Earth, the paw would be the first thing that touches that. And in the Medeoan philosophy, when human beings are brought into this life, it is the bear who opens that door so that we can follow him into this area. And we walk wherever a bear walks. We eat wherever a bear eats. We drink wherever a bear drinks. And the only difference between us and a bear is our crania. A bear's skeletal and insides all look just like a human being's except for the crania. It can stand upright, it gives birth, it has the ability to feed its own children the same as we. And if we eat those same foods, except for the carrion of course, and those same medicines that it eats, we can survive just as if that. And so long ago there was teachings about the bear cult shaman people who actually followed the bear, which led into the Wabano, which led into the Medeoan. So these are things that are talked about in spiritual context in our Patamoegans and our Medeogans. And so they use these languages in context with that. And I think that for me, understanding that broader scope of Anishinaabe is really important because that connects us to our ancestors. A lot of the words that I say and have learned actually go back and link up with some of the Lene Lenape and the Abenaki. We don't have an L and a P in our language, so we say Abenaki instead of the Lene Lenape, the Delaware tribes. And so 33,140 years ago, give or take a generation or two to the genocidal policies of Canada and the United States, we left that East Coast and we came to this area. These are the things that they talk about in our lodges, and that relationship that we had to the Abenaki and the Lene Lenape, and that people of the Longhouse, the Hatsunani, the Mohawk, the Tuscarora. So we make that full circle of the Great Lakes Basin and leaving that East Coast and coming back to us. And through our art, through our regalia, a word stolen from the French, right, to mean regal wear. In our regalia, we tell that story. And so as you see on my shield, this is who I am. I present myself as being the hand of the bear and having that same effect, that my hand is the first thing that touches those things, whether it be my children, whether it be strangers, and introducing myself. We utilize that in that process. But also we think about that bear and how that family structure is presented itself, and it's the mother who is the strong one in the family who raises the children. And in the worst case scenario, that father bear goes crazy and will literally devour its own children and remove its whole lineage. Well, we can see that in many of our own family structures where those men, they lose sight and no longer listen to their women, they no longer listen to their grandmas and aunties, and they literally devour their own families, and that lineage is lost forever. And so that's a teaching for us men, especially as Bear Clan men, that we can devour our own families, devour our own children by being greedy and envious and jealous and not following the ways that our women have left for us to do so. And refers back to one of those very first teachings, Nanabojo, one of the reasons why we say Boju, as he was charged with the responsibility and burden of going around and naming creation, all of those plants and animals and waterways. And so he would do so in greeting that, and so we use that word Boju in doing that as that man who says hello. And he had that companion, Maingan, in the studies that I have gone through and listening to Maingan was the species, but his spirit name was Chabilbos, the large one who walked with. Just like Nanabojo was a man, but his spirit name was Nanabojo. So when we talk about those things in the lodge, we go back to its original processes and understanding where it comes from in creation. Just like Ode, that strawberry, right? And our Ode, our heart, our straw. We think about those concepts and how they relate to us. When Nanabojo was lowered to our mother, the earth, he was lowered into a field of strawberries so that he would not have to work for his food. All the nutrients, vitamins, and essence that is needed to sustain life can be found in that strawberry. But it was also our very first lesson as a human being. Anybody in here ever overate berries, strawberries of any kind, grapes, apples, oranges? We get sick from it, right? Although it can sustain life, just like water, we can overdrink water and drown our own self in doing so. So that very first teaching of moderation. But we're also taught that when you go into that field of strawberries, or whether it be any other thing that you're gathering, you never pick the first one, and you always leave that last one, so that there will be a legacy, that last one will be there for us. And more importantly, we use our tobacco to go into that dominion, to ask for permission. How many here have ever asked, may I pick you? Right? There are some of us who have and do you ever hear it say no? At times. And so then you go to that next one, you go to the next milkweed, you go to the next skunk cabbage. You have that understanding, that relationship with creation. But as a father, I'm to provide and protect. And so that's what that strawberry represents, that first responsibility of man to provide and protect for their family. And I come from the Pokagon band Potawatomi, Kabunmaka, those that pick the huckleberry. And it's time to stop picking the huckleberry. One of my very first celebrations was here at St. Patrick's Park. And so I am of the huckleberry people, and that's what that blueberry, that huckleberry represents here on my shield. And so when we have these opportunities as a mnemonic tool to remember who we are and where we come from, there's different songs that are also in that lodge that will touch you, that will help you and guide yourself. One of those songs that I learned was a song that talks about the Wamigo and the rattlesnake, and how that thunderbird and the rattlesnake's relationship is. Both being male icons, that thunderbird controls the heavens, and that's who controls that copper cat in our rivers, and that's why you'll find those copper veins along our waters, is because he'll send down that lightning to keep that copper cat in there. But there's also those other serpents that are physical upon this earth. And many of you may have seen or may not have seen how those eagles, they'll swoop down and they'll grab those snakes and they'll feed themselves and their family off that snake. Well, in the language, it says Ambe, Sa, Atida, Da. And here these are our syllabics, our written languages, our written words. Some will say that, oh, we didn't have a written language, it's all oral tradition. If you go back to the Bungi scrolls and the Ojibwe scrolls, even our Boldwe-Wadami scrolls, we have actual syllabics and many different alphabets and different syllabics within each of those. Our alphabets would be specific for if you were traveling upon the waterways, if you were harvesting certain medicines, if you were having political discussions, or even what we know as people paw, what we would do as texting each other, just our layman that we talk to each other in. This is what's called the Masinigan in those scroll writings. I think now in our language we say Masinigan to represent paper. But again, we look at that birch bark and how it has that layers. Now, when we harvest that birch bark, there's 7 layers of skin on that tree, just like there's 7 layers of skin in our human being. And we can harvest up to 4 layers of that tree without causing damage, just like we can burn up to 3 to 4 layers, third-degree burns, before it causes permanent damage to our own cells. And so there's that teaching about how we are connected to those trees, that matik, and how without them we cannot breathe, and without us they cannot breathe. The air that we exhale, they inhale. The air that they exhale, we inhale. And if we turn each other upside down, right, our hair is the roots and we are the limbs. And so we have that relationship. Again, that's that mnemonic tool to remember. And that's where most of our women would give birth, is laying up against that tree with their back to that tree. That's why as Indians we have that smoked backside, because when we come and we are birthed to the ground, we didn't hit our head. We slid down gently to that earth. And so all of those things are there for us to remember. And again, when we use our art and we use our cultural icons, it helps us remember some of those words. Again, by utilizing that those circular, that Majima Dezo, that great sacred hoop of existence, we understand, and we knew long before the European that the earth was round and not flat. Right? They've only figured that out about 500 years ago. And that's a concept that indigenous people have known since time immemorial, about that circular path that we all live in, and how our mother, the earth, is round. And again, we look at those types of opportunities to share those things. I think one of the greatest teachers in anybody's life can be those animals. When you watch them and you study what those original teachings of them that they were, it helps us remember what our original teachers were also in original teachings as men and women. When those floods came originally and took away humanity because we were being evil and greedy and jealous and hurtful, we were offering animals to show our gratitude to the Creator. We were offering blood and skin of our own selves during that Jesuit religious time period all across the earth. A kinder, gentler way was given to us later, and that was the use of our tobacco, our sema. But when you look at that turtle, that Rashike, it tells that story of the floods and how we went to that turtle and we were saved upon that turtle. And every turtle has 13 quadrants all along its back to represent the 13 moons that it took for the land to come back after that flood. And as you go around the side of the turtle, it has 28 little sections on every one of them, which is the cycle of each moon, which is also the same number of days that it takes for women to cleanse their body with their mens. So it's not only a reminder of what that turtle did for us, but also about how we told time, that it wasn't just a month-to-month basis, that there was actually a process in how that time goes. And again, we utilize some of those animals. We were taught that the mink, he was the one who gave his life. He died in doing so, and it was the otter that actually brought our first mingus back up. But in doing so, that to try and save humanity and Mother Earth in and of itself, that mink was the one who perished in trying to dive down to find that earth, so that Nanabojo could blow it on the back of the turtle's back and create land again. And we go back to that idea of Turtle Island. And for some of us indigenous people who study, it's not just America that was Turtle Island. It was Pangaea, when all of the continents were as one. Some of us believe that we've been here since those beginnings worlds. We are now in our fourth world. We have gone through the world of fire, the world of ice, the world of water, and now we're here in the world of earth. There will be a fifth world that is talked about also. So we're talked about in prophecy, and we're learned about what those animals will do. And if you look at, and if you've ever been in a longhouse, even the turtle looks like a longhouse with the side windows and that trail of where we are today, walking that path today. And so again, we look at creation to help us remember who we are and what our teachings are and what our responsibilities are. And we utilize that so that we can kind of keep some of that language that we've learned. By no means am I a fluent language speaker. Not only do I butcher the English language, but I also butcher the Anishinaabe Moen. I don't do it intentionally, but I try to utilize it as best as I can. I do intentionally try and butcher the English language and say things like glitter and indigenousness, so that we understand that that's a made-up language for us, that we do have that original language, and we can utilize that language against them. And in doing so, it's very important that you learn not only your language of your own people, but that dominant society also learning that language of how to utilize it against them and for your own people, to utilize and usurp our federal legislation, utilizing NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection Act, to bring back our ancestral remains, but more importantly, to bring back those sacred scrolls, to bring back those medicine bundles, all of those things that our teachers had left behind that were taken from us. Institutions like this that have kept many of our teachings separated from our people. But in understanding that also, that institutions like this are now reaching out and trying to bring all of our peoples together across this great Turtle Island of Earth that we are here now. One of the most important things that I learned coming back to being a Potawatomi person, Bodewatomi, those that build and keep fire, was about that gift that was originally given to all of us. We talk about our Creator. When I was first introduced to the concept of Creator, the term Chipumama was told to me, and loosely translates to the master of all creation, but not into that master-servant type of understanding and role, but more along the master swordsman, how they would fold that metal, and that Creator is the best at making creation. He makes that energy that exists upon our Mother the Earth, keeps that Majimadejwa, that sacred hoop, continuously going. Then we have our own family within the cosmos, our Father the Sun, for which is 98 billion degrees. Coincidentally, we all radiate about 98 degrees. That very first gift, Ishkode, lowered from Ishkomin, so that strong heart that comes from above. It's not actually talking about the hot fire, but that gift that was lowered to us and put inside of us. Without Jesus, without that internal fire inside all of us, we wouldn't exist. And we look inside of our Mother the Earth, and what is inside our Mother the Earth? With the same material that is made of the sun. So we understand that that male sun and our female Mother the Earth have consummated and made all of life, and that's what we are here today. And so that's our responsibility as Bodhi Wadami, is to create that fire. And they talk about us being fire keepers, and how that is in relationship to. And we talk about some of those teachings about, we get into the roles and the rules of mankind, how they say that only men should start those fires and that only women should delegate that water responsibilities. We have to remember that we were so colonized and Catholicized, especially in this area, that in 1978, when we got our freedom of religion, there had to be some type of structure, not only to prove to the federal government that we understood who we were as a spiritual people, but also so that those that were participating in religion also had structure and understanding of how we can implement that into our daily lives. I don't think that in the old days that we had to wait for a woman to come along with water to give us, or that we had to wait.
You start the fire.
But we also look at how water and fire balance each other, right? What do we use to purify that water or fire? What do we utilize to control that fire but water? And so we're understanding that that male and female process is there. And we look at how, when we talk about Bodhi Wadami, those that build and create fire, and what our responsibility is, it's not just to maintain that vessel of fire, but more importantly, that we are to become those leaders that spark the interest of life, spark the interest of knowledge, spark the interest of understanding. That was our true role as Bodhi Wadami, was to create that spark of interest in all of our people. And when you look along this room, I see many of us that are here that have continuously sparked that interest within all of us. And so when I think about Bodhi Wadami, how to build and create fires, it's more about that process. Remember that for us men, this is the only way that we get to create something in life. Women have that natural ability to create life, to grow life within inside of them. Us men, we don't understand that. That's why in the Great Lakes Basin and Ohio River Valley, it was our women who were the legislators. It was the women who created law. It was the women who ran our nation. And because they understood patience, they understood commitment and dedication, something that us men had a long time and a hard time understanding. And it is also probably the downfall of our communities when the European came here. Of course, when they said, send your heads of state, send your heads of household, we sent our women. And what happened to those women? They were defiled. Their virtues were taken. They were murdered. They were raped and pillaged. And now we, us men, had to step into a role that we weren't used to, being politicians. We had words in our language, wokamakwe and ogama, that head woman and our head females, our head men and our head males, that would go and be responsible for those specific things that we were good at. And for us men, a lot of that was more of that physical aspects of being canoe makers and snowshoe makers. We would be the hunters and the providers. But we brought that meal, we brought that food into the village, and our women processed that, and they maintained that. And so when we understand how both fire and water work, then we also understand that they work together also. We're just now learning that we at one time, all science thought that all life began because of the sun. Well, now in the waters, we're also finding that life has begun in those deep waters where that volcano comes up. And again, fire and water, how does that mix together to create life? And so again, we're reminded of that. Those are those mnemonic tools. We have our copper vessels that also represent that both male and female process of how to retrieve that from the waters and pound that into the fire, and by utilizing those materials in creation to create those sacred vessels. Again, so in doing so, I wanted to share some of that with you, how those mnemonic tools, how our spiritual items, and how our regalia, our cultural art, helps us preserve that language that was gifted to us. So with that, I say, thank you.